Hello, everyone, and welcome to a biographical history of apologetics relevant to our times. Part 1, Ancient Apologetics. This will be one of 7 episodes dealing with the entire history of the subject from ancient times to contemporary times. So, this is also, I should say, part of a larger lecture series titled We Must Weep Over the Culture. Christianity and the Crisis of Late Modernity by me, Professor C. M. Jardine. The larger series takes a look at a variety of topics dealing with Christianity, Christian history, history of apologetics, history of theology, theology itself, and more. So, but today we look at the first installment of the history of apologetics, what the great apologists of the past can teach us today, what the ancient apologists still have to say to us today, Christians today, that's of value. We can see, and here I am again at the bottom right. I'm not trying to show myself off. I just like to attach a face at the beginning of a lecture, but a recorded lecture, that is, but I don't know how to turn this thing off after I start the first one. But you can rest assured that after this lecture, you won't have to see me again. But I wanted to make sure you didn't think I was some sort of AI person. This can be proven by just my appearance here, because I assure you that if I was going to put some sort of AI personage together to do these lectures, he would look a lot better than this. That's for sure. So today, ancient apologetics, Irenaeus, Origen, and Augustine, the great Augustine, are our topics, subject matter today. All of the units or the episodes have 3 apologists. I could have picked more or less. 2 seem like not enough to give the variety that these thinkers have to offer us today. 4 or more seem like too much in terms of time. So 3 it is for each episode, but it always works in Christianity to do something that has a trinity. So Irenaeus, Origen, and Augustine today. Next, in the next installment on the medieval apologists, Anselm, Aquinas, Gregory Palamas in early modern apologetics, Blaise Pascal, Joseph Butler, William Paley. Then we move on to 19th century apologetics, Soren Kierkegaard, a man named James Orr, and Abraham Kuyper. In episode 5, 20th century apologists in America, Reinhold Niebuhr, Gordon Clark, the late great Francis Schaeffer. Number 6, 20th century European apologists, G.K. Chesterton, the incredible writer C.S. Lewis, and a lesser known figure, Leslie Newbigin. And episode 7 will see us get into contemporary apologists, Charles Taylor, John Lennox, and Timothy Keller, who just passed away a few years ago. A big loss for apologists, for sure. What is Christian apologetics? It's a good question, especially if you're new to the subject. It's often been seen as a field of Christian theology. It's kind of a sub-branch that I'm reading from the slide here, of course, that aims to present a rational basis for the Christian faith, defend the faith against objections, and expose the perceived flaws of other worldviews. Often, one of the many biblical passages used here is 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give an answer, for what people ask you about Christianity and the faith, but to do it with gentleness and respect. There are a lot of other passages I could cite, that apply to apologetics and apologetic arguments. Some important disclaimers for this and subsequent lectures in this series, the one on apologetics. This is a mere apologetics approach I'm taking, so I'm trying not to do anything that comes from one pointed viewpoint. So this is neither evangelical or Catholic or Anglican, Eastern Orthodox. It tries to kind of aim at what they all have in common. I stole, of course, the phrase mere apologetics from C.S. Lewis's probably greatest theological work, Mere Christianity, where he takes kind of a similar approach. Number two, second disclaimer, the attempt here is to engage not just Christians or not just atheists, but kind of everyone. So again, an aim for the middle approach, people of other faiths, etc. Third, this is in no way meant to be comprehensive. The topic of history of apologetics is so large that would require a much longer lecture series. I have selected apologists, getting into number 4, that in my opinion are some of the most conducive for current use, whose ideas are still relevant, as the title of the lecture says today. And number 5, this is a biographical approach to apologetics, which is not the only way that it could be presented. I found this to be simpler, more straightforward, and I think has sort of more interest when you approach this and many other historical topics that I've taught over my career, coming from a biological approach. But we could do this thematically, topically, in a number of ways. But this will be biographical. Did I say biological? If I did, forgive me. I meant biographical. There I am again. I keep following myself around and I keep moving. I'm in the bottom left. So 5 apologetic themes that still resonate today. And I should have said this at the outset, but this first lecture will probably be a little bit longer than those that follow, because we're dealing with all of the kind of layouts here, including the 5 themes that will show up in lectures 1 through 7. So number 1, what I've found in common between all of the, or almost all of the apologists that will look at worldview apologetics, I believe, are crucial for Christians and non-Christians alike to see the differences between worldviews and why they matter. What's a worldview? A worldview is sort of a person's way of looking at the world, a person's way of imagining the world that they live in. Not imagining in a fictional sense, but they're not just their outward philosophy, which may be conscious or unconscious, but their sort of unconscious, often unconscious beliefs that are what are the usual basis for their actions. So understanding difference between, say, a Christian worldview and the modern secular scientific worldview, as I like to call it, is very important, I think, in understanding various features of what's happening in our society today, and one of the main ways apologetics is useful. Number 2, apologetic writings that focus on human nature and sin are very relevant today. Human beings must be able to see themselves honestly, and Christianity offers, in my opinion, the best way to do this. It also happens to be true, in my opinion. So when people see that, when they really reflect and really self-reflect on their lives and themselves, and are willing to look at themselves brutally honestly, I think they have a better chance at that point of seeing the world more clearly, seeing themselves more clearly, and opening up to Christianity. 3, getting people to want to become Christians. I think this is crucial in an era, today's modern world, where many people don't necessarily even reject Christianity, don't necessarily say they don't believe in God. They just are, it's just irrelevant to them. You can't drum up any interest at all because they don't see any point to it. They don't see any value. They don't have any views about God one way or the other, that God exists, that God doesn't exist. And so to see that there are many benefits to the Christian life and worldview and Christian doctrine and being involved in a Christian community, I think is important to try to draw people in, especially in that grouping. Number 4, I focus on cultural apologetics, specifically the intersection between Christianity and creative endeavor, music, painting, poetry, literature, movies, etc. This, I think, is also crucial for today's world, and especially, I think, important to draw in younger people to get them interested in the faith as well. And number 5, an apologetics that emphasizes how much the Christian belief system explains everything from everyday life to metaphysical questions and everything in between. Much better than any other comparable religion or philosophy, once again, in my view, because it happens to be true. Christianity offers a comprehensive picture of all of reality, everything. And I think this is important to get across to Christians sometimes as well, who haven't reflected much on this, but also to non-Christians. When they see that Christianity isn't just making a claim about, what God is or who God is and why you're supposed to go to church, but it's basically saying that Christianity explains reality. And this, to me, is one of the most convincing apologetics around, maybe the most convincing. When I first began to see, by putting on Christian lenses or spectacles, stealing a metaphor from C.S. Lewis, everything made more sense to me than before, much more sense. And so if your life seems to make more sense, things seem to work better, in from one of life's arenas to another, and then to another and another, that is likely to be evidence in favor of the worldview that you're coming from being true. So I think this also has great current, present apologetic value, defending the faith by showing people that what you're really doing is defending an honest and true look at reality. Our baseline reading. I've moved around again. I'm faking myself out here. So some of what follows is based on this volume, a really good book, an overview of the history of apologetics with a biographical and methodological theme. I'm just sticking to the biographical as well. And I'm not assigning this to you. It's not a class. This isn't a class. But I am kind of trying to show you where I'm coming from. If you are interested in the subject, this would be a good place to start. But this is just kind of a way to kind of, start a foundation for kind of, where, how this lecture series, set of episodes on apologetics and its history, to sort of see how it's, where it's coming from. And the authors say, and I believe it's at the near the beginning, our aim in this volume is to retell the history of apologetics by connecting the practice of apologetics to the people who practiced it. and their unique theological and cultural contexts. It is our hope that readers will better understand how apologetics has been done in the past, that they might strengthen their own feeble arms and weak knees, from Hebrews 12:12, for the apologetic tasks we face today. Our hope is that in reading these snapshots of past apologists, you will be encouraged, Hebrews 11, to run with endurance the race that is set before you, Hebrews 12:1, just as these faith men and women ran the race set before them. So it's a good paragraph and a good book to get our bearings before moving forward, which we'll do so now. Patristic apologetics. This is another way to say ancient or early Christian apologetics. And I think some context is required or useful when we move from era to era. Before I read from the book that I just showed you, I have many quotes from other people as well in subsequent slides, but I will give you some of this background myself briefly. So apologetics, Christian apologetics, can't be understood unless it's put in its framework in its context in the Middle East during the beginnings of the Roman Empire, not ancient Rome as a whole, but when Rome went from being a republic to empire, is about the time that Christ walked the earth and did his ministry, etc. But there's also context going back further. We don't have time again to look into all of this, but we should at least mention the Greek influence, the ancient Greeks, particularly Greek philosophy and the Greek philosophers, and even more particularly Plato and Aristotle played a large role in influencing not just the patristic or early church fathers that we talk about in this episode, but the same will be true in the next episode on the medieval thinkers, theologians. And we'll see kind of how and why by looking at one figure after another. The Roman context then is all important, since Christ was born, raised, lived in Palestine, which was a Roman province conquered by the Romans earlier, and he, of course, was in the Jewish tradition, and that's what he learned and taught, partially in his ministry. And so we must understand how Christianity kind of comes out of and partially because of the Roman Empire. When we get to Augustine, we'll have a lot to talk about there. So with that said, I'll now read the quotes from Forrest et al. The patristic period is usually taken as the formative phase of the Church between the final works of the New Testament and the Council of Chalcedon in 451. This was a remarkably creative and important stage in the consolidation of Christianity in the Mediterranean world, as leading Christian thinkers to set out to consolidate the core ideas of their faith, as set out in the New Testament, leading to the formulation of definitive statements about the identity and significance of Jesus and the distinctively Christian understanding of God. The period saw an emerging consensus on the sources of theology, particularly through the fixing of the canon of Scripture. So this is a more specifically focused context closer to Jesus, his life, his apostles, and beyond. Going on a little further along in the same passage, yet the early church faced challenges during this period, most notably the need to respond to growing hostility toward Christianity on the part of other religious and philosophical movements in the Greco-Roman world. Greco-Roman, the Greek and Roman ancient past. While theological clarification was of major importance in protecting the church's identity, the early church communities also faced challenges from Judaism and traditional Roman pagan religion, whose members came to regard Christianity in time as a threat. Christian apologists presented the faith as the only true religion, and sometimes contrasted it with one or the other competitors as false, immoral, or irrational. And we'll see this in the figures that we examine that follow. So we start with Irenaeus, one of the great Christian figures from the 2nd century. He was from the Middle East, but ended up migrating to Lyon, France, became a bishop there, and he became influential then and has been influential ever since, not just because of apologetics, but in other ways as well. Reading my own verbiage here, we don't know much about his personal biography. He appears to have been born in Asia Minor around the year 135. He knew Polycarp and was influenced by the early church bishop. He moved to France and settled in Lyon in a small Christian community. While a presbyter there, he was sent away on an assignment only to return and find the bishop martyred, meaning dead, killed, and that Irenaeus was to be the next bishop of Lyon. He was an important figure of the 2nd century, again, far beyond his contributions to apologetics. The significance of Irenaeus as a theologian cannot be overstated. His theology, grounded in the Bible and the doctrine of the church, rather than on his personal opinion, has repeatedly been a source of theological renewal, partly because of his insistence on the unique cosmic nature of Christianity, says Justo Gonzalez in his great general overview of Christian thought, and because he was among the first to lay out an unofficial attempt at a scriptural canon. Again, one of the things beyond apologetics that was of immense importance, and one of the reasons he's still talked about a great deal in the history of Christianity as well as apologetics. His use of rhetoric is complex and varied. I'm sorry, I skipped that. Going back to Forrest now, our kind of foundational text, while some patristic writers drew on philosophical arguments, Irenaeus is more interested in using rhetorical strategies. Not that he didn't do any philosophy, and he wasn't against philosophy, that's for sure. But not only was he known for and interested in rhetorical arguments, he was quite good at them in his apologetics, especially. From the opening pages of Against Heresies, his most famous book, he shows his dependence on classical rhetorical modes of argument. So this is Greek and Roman learning that he's now applying to apologetics, another common theme throughout the history of this subject. So his use of rhetoric, this is where I jumped ahead to, is complex and varied, witnessed in a variety of terms, illustrations, and concepts used against his apologetic opponents. In the hands of Irenaeus, rhetoric is a tool to serve his theology, to serve his belief in the truth and importance of Christianity. Going further, quoting the same source, there's no doubt that in the waning years of the 2nd century, Irenaeus' impact on apologetics in the early church was immense. John Baer writes, now they're quoting another scholar, by the time of his death, Irenaeus had done more than anyone else to expose those who had departed from the church for what they were, and refute their teachings. Throughout his apologetic response, he stressed the importance of the faith handed down from the apostles and the preservation of its unity and purity. Irenaeus' detailed analysis of the streams of Gnostic thought, and that's what his Apologetics is most known for, attacking the Gnostics who were attacking Christianity, not physically, but intellectually. Gnostic thought modeled the kind of classical, careful theological reflection that a Christian apologist ought to practice. Irenaeus' apologetic arguments helped the church navigate the threat of Gnosticism, not great threat, and help preserve the faith of the church. So this is what he's most known for apologetically. Gnosticism was on the rise and seen correctly increasingly as a danger and heresy. And Irenaeus shot back against some of the charges and claims made by Gnostics against Christianity, often false claims. And so his most famous work against heresies is in that vein. According to Douglas Grutus, great apologists currently, the astute Irenaeus refuted the Gnostics who falsely claimed to represent the deeper Christian teaching, the hidden core or gnosis. In so doing, they described the ultimate reality as unknowable, yet nevertheless they used mystical sounding words to describe it and its emanations. Against Heresies, the book which you see on the right, which can still be purchased and read today, was the first sustained critical examination and refutation of Gnosticism by an influential Christian leader, and because of Irenaeus' link through Polycarp back to John, John, it was widely accepted as authoritative and contributed significantly to Gnosticism's eventual decline among Christians. The quote there coming from Roger Olson's overview of the story of Christian theology. So Grutus goes on to say in his great book, an overview of Christian apologetics, which is the best and most comprehensive overview, I believe, that is on the market today, or ever done, for that matter. Grutus says, Irenaeus employs a clever reductio ad absurdum against the ineffability claim and is not afraid of mockery. He writes of a renowned teacher among the Gnostics, not just mockery, it's sarcasm and humor. It's quite good. He writes of a renowned teacher among the Gnostics who, struggling to reach something more sublime, spoke of a primary tetrad involving a certain proarch who existed before all things, surpassing all speech and nomenclature, whom I call Menotes. After many more absurd names of supposed divine figures, Irenaeus makes sport of the Gnostics by assigning his own names to these beings. There exists a power, he says, I term a gourd, and along with this gourd there exists a power which again I term utter emptiness, who produced a fruit which fruit language calls a cucumber, and another which I call a melon. So among his many rhetorical tools and among his most interesting and amusing is his capacity to make fun of, to the point of serious sarcasm and insult, Gnostic views and Gnostic writings, Gnostic thinking. This brings us now to Origen, another one of the great thinkers in all of church history. who is sometimes thought of as the first full-fledged apologist. But he has similarities to Irenaeus, and he kind of straddles the second and third centuries, a biblical scholar, theologian, apologist, and again, one of the great thinkers of the era, a prolific Christian author. He's often seen as the first to offer a true philosophical defense of Christianity, and sometimes also considered by scholars, church historians, as the first systematic theologian. One of the major strands of theology today, systematic theology. He's sometimes kind of seen as the father of this. And in some ways, he can be looked at, has been by some, as the creator, founder of the first Christian university. It wasn't the university system itself yet. That doesn't come until the Middle Ages in Europe. But the school that he began in Alexandria, again, sometimes has been seen as kind of a forerunner to universities that followed in later centuries. He was born in Alexandria, Egypt, made his career there and in nearby Caesarea. His father was executed in a Roman persecution, one of the many of Christians. He's known to, Origen, have lived a very ascetic lifestyle, few possessions, did a lot of fasting and prayer, was known for having a kind personality, and kind of, walking the walk as well as talking the talk. He was well educated in the liberal arts as well as the scriptures, influenced by Neoplatonism, learned Hebrew, so he was quite educated. Alexandria at the time was really the intellectual center of the Mediterranean world. It had been Athens in previous centuries in Greece, but really now the center of the intellectual world was Alexandria. He was in the right place for a guy of his talent and his interests. But a lot of the great thinkers from Athens had moved to Alexandria, knowing that's now the place to be. And not just theologians, but philosophers, scientists, writers, poets, engineers, people of all kinds of professional expertise. So he lectured at the catechetical school in Alexandria, the one that's thought of as a university or a forerunner of a university. He wrote on the Principles, which was his major contribution to systematic theology. So again, he wasn't just an apologist. Not that there's anything wrong with just being an apologist. There are some brilliant people that were just apologists, as we'll see, and there are now. But his best-known apologetic work was Against Celsus, a book responding to Celsus's, a figure of his time, anti-Christian diatribe and work in the True Discourse. So Origen then made his big splash in apologetics with this one major work and other writings as well, but this is his primary contribution to the subject. Against Celsus, what today's apologists can learn from it. As Roger Olson, quoted above, says, more than any other single Christian apology, this book of Origen's defeated a Goliath of opposition to Christianity and ushered the young religion into a new age of respectability in spite of continuing persecution. So an important contribution at the time, because Christians were being attacked not just physically, but being attacked intellectually and being challenged. And it was a threat at the time to the even long-term existence and survival of Christianity. So these kind of books, this kind of scholarship was of the utmost importance. Origen fairly repeats Celsus's argument, which is interesting. In fact, most of what we know about Celsus's book comes from Origen's kind of writing down of the argument, and he did it very, very carefully. So unlike many rhetoricians, writers today writing polemics, who give you kind of a straw man argument of whatever idea or whatever persons writing they're opposing in debate or in written form in some way, where they don't really do justice to it. He does a fair and complete job of looking at taking Celsus's arguments seriously before he refutes them. So the case against Christianity was stated with uncommon intelligence, not just because Celsus apparently was intelligent, but that Origen was too, and he came to understand the argument, partly because he read it so carefully and then relayed it carefully. Celsus argued, however, that the mind, or the human mind, must ascend to God. Origen responds with the extraordinary statement, this coming also from Roger Olson, that the knowledge of God begins not with the ascent of the mind, but with God's descent to human beings through a historical person. So there's one major a difference there that, of course, Origen picked up on and made the most of, refuting. We don't make an argument for God to conclude that he exists, but we begin with the presupposition that he exists. And then we can see how the Word as flesh, the incarnation of Jesus, explains one aspect of life and reality after another, offering such illumination as evidence, pointing back to the truth of the original axiom. This coming from Robert Louis Wilken, another current super good church historian. But that passage there, and my blurb, are an example of something that was one of our 5 themes at the outset today, and that is how one of the, I think, most important, in my view, ways to convince people that Christianity is true is to get them to see how much of life in the world it explains well. So Origen was already doing this. In response to Celsus' use of Plato and Aristotle as authorities in opposition to Christianity, Origen argued that Greek philosophy and Plato were mere anticipations of the higher and fuller truth. Again, showing Origen's intelligence, common sense, brilliance, pick one or more of those, but Celsus tried to say, to use Plato and Aristotle against the Christians, and Origen just kind of shrugged his shoulders and said, yeah, we use them too because they just kind of prefigured Christianity. They helped to set up Christianity. They were way ahead of their time. And that has been an influential way of thinking about, and a profitable one, for Christians ever since, through the Middle Ages and beyond, and up until the present. We now get to a person that's hard to do justice to in words. Augustine is not only one of the great figures of, among the patristic Christian thinkers of the ancient world. Not only is he one of the great thinkers of the ancient world, Christian and non-Christian alike, he's one of the great thinkers in Western history, period. And he's certainly worth reading, especially his most famous book, Confessions. At least that's the most famous one today. We're going to look more at his much longer book, his apologetic work, not entirely apologetic in nature, but much of it, City of God. But as far as background is concerned, Jonathan Hill, heaps the praise on, as well he should. Augustine is unquestionably one of the greatest theologians of all time. His influence over Western thought, religious and otherwise, is total. He remains inescapable even over 15 centuries after his death. He has been hailed as the first medieval or even the first modern man. His greatest works rank with the timeless literature of the ages. So Jonathan Hill, another church historian, I lean on him because he's more eloquent than I am. He said much the same thing that I preceded his quote with, but he just said it better than me. Augustine came from North Africa, was born into a family, was relatively well off. Father was a Roman citizen, had a respectable position in local affairs. His mother, Monica, who's more well known, Santa Monica in LA, named after her. There's a church there honoring her even now. It's not very well known. That's where Santa Monica, we think of it as a cool part of LA. True as well, but this is a reference to Augustine's mother, who was a very serious Christian. The father wasn't a serious Christian, and Augustine sort of said he believed in Christianity as a youth and a young adult, but through his actions he showed if he believed it, he didn't believe it deeply enough for it to affect his actions, and this caused much despair for his mother, much worry on her part, who wanted to see her son sort of move in the right direction, in the direction of being in Christ. In his young adult years, Augustine lived a wild and sinful life and flirted with different philosophies and religions. So Manichaeism was one, but there were other. He was an extremely precocious youth and young adult. So he had a strenuous, interesting intellectual life, even as he was running wild, with kind of a young adult's party attitude. But he did a lot of reading still, and so he was aware of and came into contact with a number of different philosophical and religious ideas. He was ambitious, at least at first, intelligent, was able to study at a university or college in Carthage, then in Italy, and prepared to become a Roman civil servant. Was going to work his way up the cursus honorum, as they called it in Rome, kind of working way up the political ladder. While in Milan, which at the time was arguably a more important city than Rome, he came under the influence and the unofficial tutelage of the great Ambrose, Saint Ambrose, Bishop of Milan, who had actually been the governor of Milan, the political governor before that, but then became the Bishop of Milan. And the relationship between Ambrose and Augustine was sort of like a father-son one. Ambrose certainly took Augustine under his wing and made him somewhat of a protege. And so Augustine's conversion to serious Christianity, or actual Christianity, was partly because of the influence, for sure, of Ambrose. But he was converted in a dramatic conversion experience while living in Milan. And there's a classic scene in Confessions where he talks about Augustine, that is. Confessions is really a memoir, autobiography after the fact, but it talks a lot about his early great propensity to sin and do evil and bad deeds before finding Christ, which utterly transformed his life, as it's supposed to. But the conversion event is recounted rather dramatically in Confessions. Along with his entire road from young man without any real foundation to a vibrant life in Christ. He was eventually made Bishop of Hippo Regius when he moved back to North Africa after he decided he no longer wanted or desired a career in kind of the Roman bureaucracy, didn't want to rise up the cursus honorum, and he'd become interested in the life of a monk and kind of a quiet life of a monk slash intellectual, and was sort of moving in that direction even in Italy before he moved back to North Africa. And the truth is, he didn't even want to be the bishop because that lifestyle of kind of quiet contemplation, reading and writing and conversation with fellow monks suited him well. But he felt was his duty. He felt God calling him, so he served as bishop and became not just one of the sort of intellectual leaders of the ancient Christian period, but a church leader in terms of playing an actual authority leadership administrative role as well, and he ended up being good at that also. City of God as the first worldview apologetic work. So again, we saw it already a little bit in the first two thinkers we looked at, but I think this is the birth of a true worldview, way of presenting Christianity, way of defending Christianity, way of arguing in favor of Christianity. Now, the worldview wasn't used at the time, certainly not by Augustine. That comes centuries and centuries later. It's a modern word. Nonetheless, worldview thinking was taking place, and Augustine in the ancient world, I think, is the greatest example of it. Again, quoting from another, I tend to quote good authors, theologians, church historians, etc. But coming from A History of Western Philosophy and Theology by John Frame, another current gifted theologian and church historian, he writes, Augustine argues that society comprises two cities, distinguished by the allegiance of their people, the heavenly city and the earthly city. And he was concerned with an antithesis between those who honor God and those who hate him, which cuts through all institutions of society and all phases of culture. The weakening of Rome was due to its paganism and unbelief, rather than to the Christians within it. So one of the important aspects to the context of this particular work, which came near the end of his life and career, is that Christianity was being blamed by Roman citizens and Roman leaders for the weakening of the Roman Empire, which throughout Augustine's life was gradually but perceptibly weakening. So a lot of it was saying, what's the Christians that have brought this on us? So part of the motivation for writing the 900-page City of God, which you can also still acquire and read, was to fend off this charge that the empire is falling because of Christianity. And he says nonsense, and he puts up kind of the two worldviews, the Christian worldview and the Roman pagan worldview side by side, and goes to town on the Roman worldview, saying this is no wonder Rome is falling. It's its own fault that its civilization, its culture, its power is crumbling. John Frame further says, Augustine believed that on some matters Christians and unbelievers could join in a common cause, but ultimately the two cities were headed in different directions, one to the culmination of God's blessing, and the other to eternal condemnation. Now, the heavenly city and earthly city sometimes, I think, are misunderstood as Augustine simply talking about heaven and earth, life here and then an afterlife, after you die, going to heaven. But and that's certainly in there. But more importantly, especially for our understanding of apologetics, Augustine is talking about the earthly city as being Rome, the heavenly city as being Christianity, living kind of together, because Christians again were living within the Roman Empire and had to abide by Roman law, which they sometimes broke deliberately or not. But overall, they were the Christians were attentive to authority, which has biblical sanction, as many of you may know. But what he's doing here is sort of, I think, a classic worldview defense of Christianity. And again, not just a defense of the specific charge against Christians for being blameworthy for the gradual crumbling of Rome, but also just saying that our worldview, the Christian worldview, is much more healthy because it's true and it's real. And it's based on values and principles, beliefs, and a lifestyle that's far superior to the Roman one. So Augustine himself in City of God at one point, though it's a very long book and it's quote worthy all over the place. Is quote worthy a word? Probably not. But he says the two cities have been formed by two loves. Earthly, by the love of self, even to the contempt of God. The heavenly city by the love of God, even to the contempt of self. The former, in a word, glorifies in itself, the latter in the Lord. For one who seeks glory from men, but the greatest glory of the other is God. For one seeks glory from men, but the greatest glory the other finds in God, the witness of conscience. So he puts it quite pithily there, a stark contrast between the two. That the Roman world is about struggling for power and about individuals fending for themselves, concerned with their own power, their own wealth, their own glory, their own fame. It's all about your rise up the cursus honorum. If you were born into the right family, really. But it's this kind of competitive struggle, and that's sort of reality in the Roman world, and it was supposed to be a good thing. But remember, Augustus could have been and was in line on the road to becoming a person wrapped up in all that, and originally wanted to be going to study in Rome to be a Roman civil servant, a Roman political leader, administrator. But midway through the process of getting educated for this, he had second thoughts and backed out and became a serious Christian kind of just after the fact. So he paints a great contrast between two worldviews. And I think this is incredibly useful, this technique for apologetics, because I think it's vital today that we do the same thing with modern secular scientific culture, as I tend to call it, and contemporary Christian culture. Which is, a lot of it's still based on tradition and, of course, Scripture as the main authority. But I think it's crucial to understand how our society has gone wrong. Most of its problems today, in my view, at least are partially explainable from the fact that our worldview, kind of like Rome's worldview, wasn't conducive to happiness, wasn't conducive to love, wasn't conducive to human kindness and to community. etc. And the Christian culture then and now was and is. So this is an incredibly important, I think, example that fortunately other apologists appear to have followed. So in wrapping this up, we won't look at all 5 themes again. I think it's numbers 1 and 5 that the 3 thinkers kind of most represent, though we could probably find all 5 of those existing in all of the apologists, or 2 out of the 3, etc. But I just made the case for worldview apologetics, number 1. It's crucial for Christians, especially now, so I won't do that again. But number 5, an apologetics that emphasizes how much the Christian belief system explains everything, explains reality, because it is it is reality, it is truth. So we really saw that in all 3 of the thinkers in one way or another. I appreciate your time. Hopefully you found this interesting, and if you did, again, there are other videos that carry on this subject. Thank you.